Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I beg to move that this House recognises the acute security situation in the Western Balkans, supports the territorial integrity and sovereignty of Kosovo and Bosnia and Herzegovina, condemns the attack by Serb nationalist militants in Banska, Kosovo on 24 September 2023, supports the authority of the Constitutional Court in Bosnia and Herzegovina, condemns Russian interference in the Balkans, notes with concern pro-Russian and pro-Serbian irredentist political rhetoric in Montenegro, and urges the government to increase its engagement with regional partners and international allies to improve the security landscape of the Western Balkans. It is a pivotal moment for the Western Balkans that approaches. A moment which will decide whether the dream of a democratic, peaceful, Euro-Atlantic integrated Balkans can be realised, or whether we will return to the nightmare of the 1990s. Without peace, there can be no progress, and with the threat of violence and embrace of hatred, insecurity is bred. Today, I hope to set out some steps the government can take to protect peace, and as we all hope, protect us from having to confront the dreadful alternative, conflict. I would, however, like, Mr. Speaker, to thank the Backbench Business Committee for agreeing to this debate. It is very much appreciated, and also welcome the ambassadors of Bosnia and Herzegovina and Kosovo to the Chamber today. I want to start, Mr. Speaker, by discussing Bosnia and Herzegovina, which with its multi-ethnic character and constitution acts as a linchpin for the wider region. Next year, we mark the 30th anniversary of the Dayton Agreement, which brought an end to the horrors of the Bosnian War. Now, before the war, 34% of people in Sarajevo were married to spouses of a different ethnicity. Children who studied and played together, neighbours who cooked together, but who suddenly found themselves separated by conflict, unable to understand why their worlds had fallen apart and why those they had called friends shunned and abandoned them. The tragedy of the Bosnian War is embodied in the story of the 25-year-olds Bosko Brkic and Admira Ismek, known as the Romeo and Juliet of Sarajevo. Bosko was a Bosnian Serb who was deeply in love with his girlfriend Admira, a Bosniak. Both were trapped in the siege of Sarajevo by the Bosnian Serb army and attempted to escape in 1993, hoping to continue their young lives full of hope away from the horrors of war. As they attempted to leave the city, Bosko was shot by a sniper and killed instantly. Another shot injured Admira, who in her last moments crawled to Bosko and embraced his body, eventually succumbing to her wounds while she hugged her beloved. Their final embrace, as Admira lay dying, signalled the unwavering strength of their bond and what it represented. The rejection of hatred, the rejection of ethnic division. The hopes of the young Romeo and Juliet of Sarajevo continue to be held by many people across Bosnia and Herzegovina, and it is our duty to empower them to dream of this brighter future and do all we can to limit the return of violence and more cruelty on their streets. I would very happily.
I'm very grateful to Honourable Frankie Benway, and may I thank her for bringing this debate at a crucial time. And I don't think it's any exaggeration to say that there is a tinderbox and knife edge, to mix metaphors, of this current situation. The story she's just relayed, I think, is very important, and would she agree with me that what it does illustrate is that the nationalistic leaderships who wanted to stir up this hatred were in such a minority, because the vast majority of the population of Bosnia and Herzegovina were unaware of their ethnic backgrounds. They saw themselves as Bosnians, and that was exploited by those nationalist tendencies.
My right honourable friend, unsurprisingly, is absolutely right when he says that, and that is why it's so important that at this time we see a risk of this return to the tinderbox, and that's why in this place we will attempt to safeguard the truth, because we must never forget the horrors of the Bosnian War or the siege of Sarajevo, which is still the longest in modern history and where almost 12,000 civilians were killed. Nor must we forget the genocide of Srebrenica, where 8,000 men and boys were murdered, and the 100,000 people dead and the 2 million displaced. But sadly, those who seek to break up Bosnia today use the past as a weapon, inverting it to re-traumatise victims and to glorify atrocities. Milorad Dodik, the so-called president of Republika Srpska, has consistently denied the Srebrenica genocide, despite a 2021 Bosnia-wide law denying and banning genocide denial. And as we all know, denial is a continuation of genocide. A group of countries, including Bosnia, Germany and Rwanda, are bringing a resolution at the UN General Assembly to formally recognise the 11th of July as the International Memorial for the victims of Srebrenica genocide. The resolution is supported by Balkan countries including Croatia, Montenegro, Albania, North Macedonia and Slovenia. Yet Serbia opposes it. Enshrining remembrance of the Srebrenica genocide and other victims of the Bosnia War in international law sends a strong message that the international community rejects historical revisionism and the weaponisation of the past. It also prevents the re-victimisation of survivors. And it sends a strong message to Milorad Dodik and others, and all those who seek a return to the 1990s, that we have not forgotten and we will not forget. So I'm very grateful that the Foreign Secretary has made clear the UK will both vote for and promote the resolution. However, I would say that some are seeking to misrepresent the resolution. What it does not do is pass a collective judgment against the people of Serbia. It's about individual responsibility and ending the denial of genocide to build a better future with a common language. Denial prevents communities from coming together and building new futures. And it is the memory of past traumas that steels us in our mission today to safeguard modern-day Bosnia and Herzegovina. The Dayton Agreement, which the UK is a signatory of, established the Office of the High Representative and the Constitutional Court of Bosnia to ensure the state's viability and development. Milorad Dodik has sought to violate the treaty, passing illegal laws in Republika Srpska to reject the authority of both of those entities. He is now before a court on charges relating to those violations, and if found guilty, will be banned from holding office for 5 years and face up to 5 years in prison. Predictably, rather than face up to the consequences of his own actions, Dodik has threatened Bosnia and Herzegovina itself, stating that Republika Srpska will secede from Bosnia if he is convicted. Republika Srpska is not Dodik. Dodik is not Republika Srpska. He is wrong when he endangers all those who live within its environs. This cowardly attempt to shield himself behind state institutions would have dire consequences for all Bosnians, and so the UK must be unequivocal in our support for the Constitutional Court and its judgments. Now, Russia has a clear interest in fomenting conflict in the Balkans to distract from its renewed illegal invasion of Ukraine. Sadly, it holds a veto over the security framework of Bosnia and Herzegovina and the renewal of EUFOR. This hands it a veto, consequently, over the entire region, akin, some might say, to handing a match to an arson. Eventually, you will be forced to put out the fire. Therefore, I would very happily.
I'm grateful for my honourable friend. And actually, just to illustrate the point of where we are with Russia, Dodik gave the Order of Republika Srpska, their highest order, to Putin.
He absolutely did. Once again, my right friend is absolutely right. And in fact, over the next few days, there will be a great Easter bringing together of Dodik and Vucic and others on exactly that point around a greater Serbia, which I will touch on briefly. So I asked the government to work with our allies to consider an alternative peacekeeping framework led by NATO to EUFOR. The Dayton Agreement allows NATO, it gives it permission explicitly to legally establish a force in Bosnia for peacekeeping without time limit or UN approval. There is widespread support from the Bosnian government, and its legality under the Dayton Agreement means that neither Dodik nor Putin could block it, unlike the current arrangement with EUFOR. As a minimum, the UK should send a NATO peacekeeping force to the strategic Britchko district, which I'm sure my gallant and honourable friend will speak about shortly. Even 1 battalion of NATO troops in Britchko would make a succession militarily impossible and have a stabilising effect on all of Bosnia's politics. I would very happily.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the Honourable Lady for giving way. I entirely endorse that point. A British battalion positioned in Bosnia would give a very, very strong signal. And frankly, a British battalion is probably the best battalion to send into such a peacekeeping situation.
My honourable gallant friend is absolutely right. And to that point, I know that the Foreign Secretary, in answering questions from members of the other place yesterday, said he preferred to emphasise and focus on Kosovo. However, we saw when British troops went into Kosovo recently, last September, that there was a resurgence of the actual delivery of the mandate. My right and honourable gallant friend is absolutely right that it is British troops that would make a fundamental difference. And the fact the Dayton Agreement gives us explicit permission to create a new security force means that we should be actively debating this. Finally, Mr. Speaker, the UK also should look at extending the sanctions that were levied against Dodik and other senior figures in his circle, which I was relieved to have secured a few years ago. The joint US sanctions with the UK and the US have begun to take serious effect, with Bosnian banks closing the accounts of those who have been targeted. I would also urge the government to consider sanctioning other figures in Republika Srpska who support laws designed to undermine the High Representative and the Constitutional Court, promote genocide denial and glorification, and attempt to transfer Bosnian state assets to their own personal control. Bosnia, with its multi-ethnic character and constitution, is a barometer for the entirety of the Western Balkans. And when threatening the breakup of Bosnia, Dodik said, "If anybody tries to stop us, we have friends who will defend us." I say, let us show him that Bosnia too has friends, none more steadfast than the United Kingdom. Now, Mr. Speaker, is a time for deterrence diplomacy and for a rejuvenated NATO to take the initiative and ensure Bosnia's sovereignty and security is protected. Now, whilst the situation in Bosnia is tense, Kosovo is the only country in the Western Balkans to have faced an attack on its soil since our last debate on the Western Balkans. The Banska attack carried out last September saw 30 heavily armed Serb militants murder a Kosovan police officer, Afrim Djaku, before engaging in a firefight from the Banska Monetary. The amount of weaponry seized from the militants is truly extraordinary, and I've seen it myself, and I refer to my declaration of interest. Very happily.
I do thank my honourable friend for allowing me to intervene and also for securing today's important debate on security in the Western Balkans. As I witnessed for myself during a recent cross-party parliamentary delegation visit to Serbia, while there is immense potential, there are also stark challenges within the region. Does my honourable friend agree that the UK government must do its level best to help diffuse tensions between Serbia and Kosovo, help ensure that the rights of minorities on both sides of the border are protected, but also, crucially, to help promote democracy, that it must do its level best to reduce Russian influence in the region and in Serbia?
Without question, the right honourable gentleman, everyone must help diffuse the situation. Everyone must support ethnic minorities. And we should be very clear. We in this place, as I will come into later in my speech, want to be a friend to a democratic Serbia. That is what we all aspire to in the region. Going back to the Banska attack, the arsenal that these 30 militants had included 41 anti-tank rocket launchers, 66 automatic rifles, 2 automatic grenade launchers, 4 mortars, 2 armoured vehicles and over 50 kilograms of explosives. The weapon serial numbers lined up. These are not miscellaneous items, nor are they old or expired stock. Some were just a couple of years old. And I'm sure the Minister will agree with me that this level of weaponry is not typical for some provincial militia. And therefore it begs the question, who was supporting the Banska attackers and why? The answer may lie in some of the footage that was recovered from those who undertook the attack. It shows the militants training in a Serbian military base on the 20th of September, just 4 days before the attack. Likewise, some of those aforementioned serial numbers on the weaponry match up to the maintenance documents, recording the same weapons as belonging to the Serbian military. Now, I have asked countless times in this House, in writing and in private meetings, the government to release an assessment of whether the Serbian state provided material and strategic support for the Banska attack. The US has completed an attack on who is responsible and their links to the Serbian government. Our allies need to urgently release it, because truth matters, because accountability matters, because without that report, the truth is denied, and without that report, there is no deterrence, because impunity breeds contempt for the rule of law and order. Swift and equitable accountability for acts of aggression is crucial if we want to discourage future violence and dispel any notion of appeasement. So I will ask again, who organised the Banska attack, who provided the weaponry, and what do we assess was their intent? And I'd be grateful if the Minister could answer that when he responds. What we do know beyond doubt is the attack was led by Milan Radovic, a former Vice President of the Srpska List party. The current wave of tension in northern Kosovo exploded when Srpska List orchestrated an electoral boycott of municipal elections last May. Without the participation of Kosovan Serbs, the election returned Albanian mayors. The installation of the mayors by the Kosovan government sparked unrest, and we have all spoken about how risky that was, including me directly to the government themselves. However, what we then saw was a violent attack by on KFOR by Serbian militias, which injured 25 Italian and Hungarian troops, some of whom will never walk again. At the time, the UK, US and EU condemned Kosovo for installing the democratically elected mayors, but did not criticise Serbia for its support of the boycott and Srpska List. I wrote a joint statement signed by 74 parliamentarians from Europe, the US and Canada, almost every chair of a foreign affairs committee across Europe, asking for a fairer approach to the crisis and for Kosovo not to be singled out. This statement and multiple votes and debates in the EU Parliament have shown that the international community wants to see a more even-handed approach to Kosovo and Serbia. Kosovo has since, under international pressure, facilitated a referendum in the northern municipalities to elect elections for new mayors. Srpska List again orchestrated a boycott, frustrating the democratic process and inflaming intercommunal tensions even further. The US has been clear now, however, that Kosovo has fulfilled its democratic obligations and the northern mayors are legitimate. The EU, unfortunately, has been less clear in its messaging, insisting on both-sided approach. So can the Minister confirm that the UK recognises that Kosovo has attempted to rectify the situation under its constitution and that regardless of boycott by Srpska List, the current mayors are legitimate, regardless of their ethnicity? I would also point out at this point how disappointing it is that ethnicity continues to play such an important role in the Balkans. Despite constant impediments by Russia and Serbia, Kosovo is on the verge of membership of the Council of Europe, with its application moving to the Committee of Ministers for approval this month. Membership would mark a vital milestone in Kosovo's progress in the dark days of the 1990s, and Kosovo's journey is one that we have played an important role of and we should all be proud of. However, there are some internationally who said that Kosovo should only be admitted if it creates an association of Serb municipalities. The UK should reject this firmly. Whilst I do not want another Republic of Serbs from the Western Balkans at all, an ASM will be created as part of the Belgrade-Pristina dialogue, but it cannot be rushed and it cannot be extracted through external pressure. So can the Minister confirm the Foreign Secretary will vote for Kosovo's admission to the Council of Europe this month, regardless of progress on the ASM, and encourage all allies to do so? More broadly, the UK, as a former member of the Quint, should assume a more active role in the peace talks. Our current passivity is untenable in the face of such a volatile situation. We are no longer constrained by EU consensus, and non-recognisers must be more inventive in diplomacy, so we not just find our voice, but also our backbone and stop standing on the sidelines and take action where we have duty to support our allies. Equally, the UK should be engaged in the 5 EU states that do not recognise Kosovo's sovereignty to help boost Kosovo's trajectory towards EU and NATO membership, while solidifying the inviolability of its territorial integrity. The US and the EU should also adopt a resolute posture when addressing Serbia's leadership for their role in stoking instability, aligning with Putin and increasing autocratic tendencies at home and abroad. The UK and Kosovo have a fantastic relation, and I thank the Foreign Secretary for having visited Kosovo earlier this year to demonstrate that partnership. This bond was forged during NATO's intervention in 1999 when British troops helped to avert further atrocities and put Kosovo on a path towards democracy that it has fully embraced. And our armed forces continue to play a role. After the Banska attack, the Princess of Wales Royal Regiment quickly deployed to bolster KFOR, acting professionally to defuse the situation. Likewise, the Royal Regiment of Fusiliers deployed last year at a period of heightened tensions. The British Army is highly respected and appreciated, and so I'm sure the whole House will join me in thanking each and every soldier who served there with distinction. You made an enormous difference. I urge the Government now to work with NATO partners to ensure KFOR is given the support and taskings it needs to maintain peace and stability across Kosovo. We should consider the establishment of a new security alliance between the US, UK and other willing NATO member states with Kosovo, because this would help allay the immediate security concerns that we see. And let me give you one example of why it's needed. Last December, President Vučić stated that Serbia should simply follow the example of Azerbaijan in Nagorno-Karabakh and wait for the special geopolitical circumstances allowing it to reclaim Kosovo. This is a statement of intent and one that should not be ignored. Such comments from a head of state are unacceptable. Indeed, Vučić threatened me last year for speaking out against the smuggling of weapons into Kosovo. My warnings were decried by many, and yet what I predicted devastatingly came to pass in Banska, and I'm grateful to the Speaker and this House for the support you gave me at that time. There were also reports of electoral irregularities during the Serbian election and the busing of people in, followed by the opposition MP Nikola Sajilovic being kidnapped and brutally beaten by Serbian authoritarians. It is fitting that the Serbian opposition operates under the banner Serbia Against Violence. We in this House want to be friends to a democratic Serbia. We want elections to be free and fair for the Serbian election, but there needs to be political reform, and that begins with free and fair elections, one that I fear we are not seeing, not least when we have Xi Jinping today in Serbia encouraging Serbia to join the BRICS.
I thank my honourable friend. And during a recent cross-party parliamentary delegation visit to Albania, we witnessed for ourselves, thanks to fruitful meetings with the President, the Speaker, Ministers, MPs and others to help strengthen ties, that Albania is a close, trusted ally in terms of defence, in terms of migration, and indeed the UK government is helping to support a great deal of work to tackle modern slavery, and we also witnessed the UK government supported youth initiatives within Kukes. But there was also considerable concern out in Albania, and also during my recent meeting with the British Albanian diaspora about the sovereignty of Kosovo. There is a great deal of concern around that, and that is something, does my honourable friend feel that that is something that the British government must work with Albania and other allies to ensure that we help protect Kosovan sovereignty?
Yes, we must absolutely do that. Now, I had hoped to touch on Montenegro, but I will conclude, Madam Deputy Speaker. In Bosnia, we can protect the truth by voting for a UN resolution to commemorate the Srebrenica genocide. We can end Dodik's threats of secession by transitioning to a NATO-led peacekeeping mission under the provisions of the Dayton Agreement. And we can continue our successful programme of sanctions to shut down the accounts of those who threaten peace. In Kosovo, we can build on the UK's proud legacy by voting to admit Kosovo to the Council of Europe, and we can redouble our commitment to KFOR and extend its mandate by taking a more proactive approach to countering militias and criminality. We can commit to a fairer and more even-handed approach to the Belgrade-Pristina dialogue, and in Serbia we can work with international partners to promote free and fair elections and a media environment. We must be clear that we stand on the side of the people of Serbia, and that irredentist dreams care little about the people of the Balkans. It is within our power to support stability and security through deterrence and being resolute in our commitment to the region. Inaction is a choice, and it is one that we cannot make. We must not step back, and we must not look away. Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker.